Class. We're going to pick up where we left off. I'm sorry um, for getting cut off, but we were talking about the Star Wars. No, we're not talking about the movie, but we are talking about this sky defense. And the idea is that if a missile is shot at us, we are able to shoot it down before it hits us. And this scares the Soviets, and they are worried that we have the upper hand now. So now that there's this arms race, who can get the best guns and the best defense the quickest? So we begin to compete with the Soviets, and we will eventually win. We'll see how the Soviets will start to decline. Your book gives several reasons. We see restlessness within the Soviet Union. That doesn't help them. Um, their leadership is not what it was at the very beginning, so that has a decline. Um, that leads to the decline. Economically speaking, if your country is not prospering or doing well economically, then it's very hard to control the people. In fact, the opposite is true. Whenever you're hurting economically, it's hard to control the people, which is the last point. But um, Mikhail Gorbachev is going to be this pivotal point in the Soviet Union. So we've seen Stalin, well, first Lenin, then Stalin, and then we see Khrushchev. Those are going to be the big three in communism in the Soviet Union. But Gorbachev, he's a communist, but he's very relaxed, mainly because he has to be. In order for his country to keep up with the rest of the world, communism doesn't work, and his country is failing. Um, so he has to ask for help. In fact, he really works toward this policy of openness, glasnost, and perestroika. So I want you to know those two terms specifically, and this is going to kind of be his focus on restructuring this communism. What essentially he's going to do is he's going to add the free market system, capitalism, to communism. So he's going to intertwine some of the capitalistic ideas into communism, which should tell you right there which system is better. If you have to incorporate one system inside the other, which one is more dominant, the one that is being incorporated into the other one. So he really pushes for glasnost and opening the Soviet Union up mainly for help. So it doesn't help that he has to do this for his country, and who is the leader on the other side of the spectrum in capitalism? Ronald Reagan. And we all know Reagan's character. He's very firm, very gentle, but very firm. And him against Gorbachev, of course, Reagan is going to win most of the time. In fact, on 533, you see them talking in the Oval Office, Ronald Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev. And in fact, they're going to have a pretty unique relationship. That they're going to be not friends, but they are going to work together on a lot of things. In fact, we're going to see Gorbachev get challenged by Reagan here in a little bit. We also see now that Gorbachev has opened up this restructuring of the system, we start to see a lot of these freedom fighters, if you will, um, look for their opportunity and see their opportunity to change their country. It first starts in Poland with Welch Walesa, and he gets it started. It's a very complicated race, but he's eventually going to win the presidency, and he head of this solidarity movement, which is pushing for this reform. It's what the people are wanting. Hungary and Czechoslovakia are doing that as well. They are not only opening their borders, but they are also trying to get rid of these dictators that are part of their country. And the big symbol of communism, the Soviet Union, is this Berlin Wall. The Berlin Wall goes up literally overnight to stop people not from coming into the city, but from leaving the city, which should tell you everything right there. Well, 1989, Reagan, actually a couple of years before, Reagan challenged Gorbachev, said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. Well, Reagan's going to head out of the Oval Office. He's going to serve his terms. And then his vice president, George H.W. Bush, the older, is going to come in. He's going to really pick up right where Reagan left off. And during his presidency, we see the Berlin Wall fall. And you can see Ronald Reagan's famous speech doesn't fall during his presidency, but it's mainly because of his presidency. On page 535, you see a picture of a remnant of the wall with the people that risked their. Whose phone was that? That was my phone. I'm sorry. People that risked their lives to get over the wall, and it's a monument to us today to remind us of the dangers of communism. So you can talk to some people today that still have remnants of the walls. Whether or not that's true or not, it's possible because as they were tearing down the wall, people would just take sledgehammers and just start whacking away at the wall. So the probability of it being the wall is there, but you could just make some concrete, pick up some concrete outside and say, oh, it's part of the wall. Like how do we actually know? Um, can be very difficult, but it is possible because a lot of people did just take it home. Well, we see the USSR starting to crumble, especially we see the Berlin Wall falling. That's kind of a symbol of the USSR. Notice several of these revolutions coming up. The big one is in Russia whenever Boris Yeltsin comes to power. He was an ex-communist that was then elected as president. So here you're seeing this tighten toward um, this change in Russia. Now, many people are like, okay, he's an ex-communist. We kind of know the communist game where they're going to change their minds to whatever can grip the people. And right now, communism is losing its grip because it's failing. And they say, okay, we can't run the system anymore. We got to go at it at a different plan. So many believe that uh, communists just changed their name in order to build it back up, and then they're in control. Many believe that the current president of Russia, Putin, um, is is a communist and tries to run it with the free market involved. So there's a lot of theories, but needless to say, we see the Soviet Union totally crumble. And what's going to take place, these countries that were part of the Soviet Union is not just Russia, but it's a bunch of little countries east of Russia that were a part of the Soviet Union. And these countries are now on their own, but they're going to form an alliance similar to what they had in the Soviet Union called the Commonwealth of Independent States. That's very important. And they're still going to have this alliance. I'm sorry, I don't know why I have a random square there. But let's finish up. We are going to be on page 537. Many of this last section really talks about the other little countries that's involved. I want to focus on the Balkans, which was the highlight during World War One, and it's still a highlight today. Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, these are going to be the Baltic states. This is going to be just east of Russia, bordering Poland. So these are major countries as well, even though we may not hear a lot about them. But they're going to become independent. Ukraine, that's big. We actually see Russia just a couple years ago, 2014. I was in college. I remember it. Like the World War III memes again happened way back then when Russia tried to invade Ukraine. So Russia is not happy that they lost this land. In fact, even today, they would take this land if they could. But Russia is going to be the main leader that comes out of the Soviet Union. All these other little countries are going to pop up as well. Let's see. We have Poland, Hungary, but the big one is Czech Republic and Slovakia are going to become two separate nations. And many of these divisions were peaceful, many were not. You see, Yugoslavia was not. Many are going to overthrow the dictator. Many dictators are not going to want to give up that power. So we see this power struggle happening, but these countries are on their own because the Soviet Union is no longer intact. So these dictators are going to have to fend for themselves, and many times they're not able to do so. So we see many nations come about. For example, you see the ones at the bottom, Yugoslavia, we mentioned the Czech Republic, Poland, Hungary, and needless to say, Yugoslavia is going to be the biggest one with the biggest bloodshed. Czechoslovakia is actually going to go relatively peacefully, and they call it the Velvet Revolution because it was nice and simple, but places like Yugoslavia are not going to be that easy. So now Europe looks very similar to the maps you see on 537 and 538. And this is all relatively recent. In fact, 1993, that was 1991 and 1993 were just a few years away from my birth year. So that's very, very recent in our modern history. It all comes about with the fall of the Soviet Union. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I wish we could have got to the last chapter. I'm sorry. But I wish you guys the best. I miss you. I wish we could be in class to say goodbye. But I hope you guys have an awesome summer. I hope you guys stay in God's word, stay encouraged in God, even through this whole virus. I don't know what the summers look like, but just stay positive. And please reach out to me with any questions you have, even during the summer. Feel free to email me. I would love to help you guys with whatever you guys need. But I'll miss you guys. Have an awesome summer, and I'll see you guys next year as 10th graders. That's awesome. Have a great summer, guys.